Football, soccer fans, whatever you want to call it, they're all focused on that one tournament that kicked off today, the World Cup. You might have heard of it. Let's take a look now, though, at the nexus of business and sports, specifically that World Cup, because it is staged every 4 years. The competition will determine soccer's global champion among 32 national teams. Yeah, all of that is the sports. That is obviously important, but it is also big business. The sports international organization FIFA estimates the Russia event will generate revenues of $6.1 billion. That's out of that number, $1.65 billion come in sponsorships and just over $3 billion in TV rights. Joining us to help break down the economics of the World Cup is Tomer Fadlon. He's a lecturer and expert on the politics of sports at Tel Aviv University. Tomer, great to have you with us. Numbers like that $6 billion, is that an average World Cup number?
Yeah, overall it's an average World Cup number, and we have to take the difference here because you have the revenues that going to the host country, to Russia, and revenues that going to FIFA. FIFA gets the money from tickets, from sponsorships, and from TV rights, and Russia expects to have like great revenues from tourism, from foreign investments, and of course from the feel-good effect that economists like to speak about.
We've heard about the Olympics that these host countries go in with great expectations that don't always pan out. How does the World Cup usually pan out for the countries who are the hosts?
The same as the Olympic Games. These are major sporting events, and I have to say something. It's not only the biggest sport event in the world, it's the biggest event in the world in 2018. With all the respect to what happened in Singapore 2 days ago. Anyways, the Olympic Games and the Soccer World Cup are really major events in economic perspective as well. And host countries are really expect to have major revenues from tourism above all, and usually it doesn't really...
short-term effect. It doesn't.
Yeah, there's short-term effect, but also long-term effect, because they expect tourists to come to the host country, and okay, of course, they come to the host country to watch the game, to participate in the game as well, but they have to sleep overnight and to have to buy some food and go to museums and go to restaurants. But overall, if we see like major events in the past, it doesn't really happen.
Right, like South Africa and Greece, it didn't really help.
Or even Brazil.
And Brazil
Brazil is a great example, because in Brazil, there was major tourism from countries like Colombia, countries like Uruguay, and countries like Argentina. And what these three countries have in common, they all share a border with Brazil. So people these poor tourists just came to Brazil to watch the game and drove all night back to Uruguay and Argentina.
But what about countries far beyond those borders that actually have a big stake? Countries like China this time around that don't have a big stake in the actual competition, but they do in dollars.
Yeah, okay, China is not in the World Cup. The China national team is not participating in the World Cup, but Chinese economy is all over the World Cup. The major sponsors in this World Cup come from China. We have a major sponsorship from Hisense, for example, and we have other major companies as well, because FIFA has a huge problem with sponsorship in the past 3 years.
Why is that? I've read that sponsorships are down. What's the problem?
Okay, there are three main reasons. First of all, people look at FIFA right now as a toxic brand. Because of the corruption, because of all the scandal. FIFA spent a lot of time in the courts in the U.S. because of all these investigations they had.
Just a little background. That's a corruption scandal, bribery.
Exactly.
Some people allege for bringing the World Cup to Russia that there were bribes, but certainly involving Qatar, the upcoming match, that more coming to Qatar. So certainly bribery has been a big problem for FIFA.
Bribery is a big problem, of course, and that's what happened when people really think that FIFA is like a toxic brand and they don't want to relate to FIFA. But the Chinese companies see an opportunity here. They see a vacuum when they can enter and say, okay, we are in the FIFA World Cup. Anyways.
So what are the other reasons, though, you said, for sponsorship being down?
There are two reasons. One of them is that Russia is not really an attractive event or venue for these sponsors from all over the world. In Western media, people see Russia in a really bad way. The Russians call it that the Western media thinks that the Western media is sick. Why sick? They have this disease called Russophobia.
Well, let me ask you about one aspect. There's been a lot of press about the attitude to the gay, lesbian, gay, bi community in Russia. Reports I saw even today of a gay activist being detained.
Not a place they can live freely.
And that's one of those things you think that maybe hurts, the image of it.
That hurt the image of Russia, but overall, in the future months, we expect to have a good opportunity in Russia as well. I mean, it's going to be a really good place to be in Russia during this month overall. Okay, so the second, the other reason is Russia, and the third reason is club football against national teams football.
Explain that to our non-football, non-soccer fans.
To me over here.
In the past, the Soccer World Cup was the major event in the world. Actually, not only in the football world, in the sporting world.
These are national teams of the countries.
Every 4 years. But nowadays, club football, like the UEFA Champions League, is even bigger than that. And
that's like individual clubs like England's Manchester United, Real Madrid from Spain, or Barcelona. These are bigger than their national teams.
Exactly. Major sponsors like Barcelona, like Manchester United, like Real Madrid, more than they like national teams.
And talking about one great example of that, the coach of the Spain, the national team, was dismissed because apparently just before because he thought it's more attractive to go, presumably for a lot more money, to Real Madrid.
Sure, of course. Club football is much better than national teams football in the past 20, 25 years. It's not as it used to be in the past when the Soccer World Cup was the major event for businesses as well.
So let's bring it back to the business and the money. With so much money being put into each of these games, with countries like China with a big stake in it, who is a sort of winner and loser each time around? Who benefits from an event like this?
Actually, in this World Cup, I think that Russia can benefit a lot, because when we are looking at the host country, we have to realize that each host country have a different starting point.
Right.
Germany's starting point in 2006, or France's starting point in the 1998 World Cup was much better than Russia. Russia's image is bad. They're dealing with 4 years of sanctions from the EU and from the United States. So now people can really see Russia and come to Russia and see that maybe Russia is not that bad as they think they are.
One last question, Tomer. Is it, very briefly, is there make a difference which teams are in the finals? Could that help financially? What would be an attractive? Give me the most attractive final.
I think the most attractive final is Brazil-Argentina, or maybe Brazil-Germany. Germany is like one of the top 3 economies in the world, and Brazil is the most favored national team in the world.
Okay. All right. Tomer Fadlon.